Welcome to LSB Feaster's Radio Aircheck and Classic TV channel.
All News 13, WRR, Dallas. For All News 13, this is Joe Graham. Bribery charges have been filed against 50-year-old Dallas County Deputy District Clerk John Grizzoffi for allegedly taking $350 in payment to fix a drunken driving charge. The deputy clerk was a 5-year employee of District Clerk Bill Shaw and was in charge of filing civil suits. Shaw does not presume that Grizzoffi is guilty until proven so, but he has ordered him taken off the job until the matter has been cleared up. Grizzoffi was arrested Thursday afternoon after allegedly accepting marked money from a DWI defendant. The arrest capped a 1-year investigation, according to District Attorney Henry Wade. The director of the Civil Defense Department has been accused of being derelict in his duties by an employee in that department. The charges appear in a letter from Dan Roberts to the city manager. Roberts accuses C.W. McCoy of desertion, incompetency, and intentional neglect of duty. Assistant City Manager Don Cleveland has been reviewing the allegations and has met with the principals involved. Most of the charges contained in the letter from Roberts refer to circumstances surrounding the tornado in North Dallas on May 26th. We'll be back with more news after this.
Any veteran who has ever spent time in a VA hospital knows how lonely it can get, even though the professional staff does everything they can to make us comfortable.
Much of this loneliness is erased by the VAVS, the Veterans Administration Voluntary Service Program for hospitalized veterans.
It made me feel real good to know that somebody would spend time with me, just because they wanted to.
Hundreds of volunteers from such organizations as the Disabled American Veterans and Auxiliary participate in the VAVS program. The DAV volunteers give something priceless to those who have sacrificed so much time and attention. You can help ease the lonely hours of hospitalized veterans by volunteering for VAVS work. Call your DAV hospital representative at the VA hospital nearest you. Become a friend to a friend who needs you.
How is one of the youngest federal judges in the country holding up after 7 months on the job? Although the hours are long, quite well. Jackie King has a report.
Judge Patrick Higginbotham is persevering, but it's obviously because he doesn't mind hard work. In an interview with All News 13, Higginbotham revealed he and his staff have been working about 7 days a week since he became judge in an effort to establish his court. Catching up on the backlog of cases that his court had does not leave Higginbotham much time for his favorite pastimes, playing tennis and sailing, but he says he has no regrets about becoming a federal judge.
No, I never have really had any serious thoughts about returning to the private practice. I have, of course, at times yearned for a little more freedom. The responsibility is obviously quite heavy.
Higginbotham says he thinks he's in the best job in government for a lawyer. This is Jackie King, All News 13.
John Conley says the vice presidency is a do-nothing job. Frequently mentioned as a potential running mate for President Ford, the former Texas governor said, "I've never known a happy vice president in all my public life." The Houston millionaire rancher and lawyer was keynote speaker at the Southern Commodity Producers Conference and Trade Show in Birmingham, Alabama. Conley says the vice presidential post has not been offered by Ford and he's not sure he would take it. He says positive efforts are being made by key Republicans to block his chances at sharing a Ford ticket. As he put it, "I'm sure there's a Stop Conley movement." After Ronald Reagan's announced liberal Pennsylvania Senator Richard Schweiker as his potential running mate, Conley endorsed Ford and has been campaigning for him. San Antonio District Judge James Onion says he will not throw out a damage suit brought against Southwestern Bell Telephone. Fired Bell executive James Ashley and his wife filed the suit last January, claiming that Bell invaded their privacy and asked $4 million in damages. Onion, in refusing to drop the suit, ruled against Bell lawyers who had contended Ashley failed to supply sufficient evidence to back up the suit. Ashley and his wife claim Bell used their personal long-distance call records illegally. Also contended is that the records were used to harass witnesses in another lawsuit against the phone company. 2 state health department employees found a radioactive radium capsule buried in a ditch alongside State Highway 35. Department officials in Austin said Larry Joe Stevenson and Floyd Hameter discovered the capsule when a radiation detection instrument in their car spiked as they drove south from Pearland Wednesday. Stevenson and Hameter are members of the Occupational Health and Radiation Control Division. The two inspectors said the capsule is a pretty hefty source of radiation, giving a reading of about 50 roentgens per hour. Health Department officials are trying to determine where the capsule came from and why it was buried near the highway. An aide to Texas Attorney General John Hill says Hill will support a lawsuit seeking to speed Houston compliance with sewage treatment regulations. The Texas Water Quality Board voted this week to ask Hill to oppose the state district court suit by the Clear Creek Basin Authority, but Assistant Attorney General Troy Webb said the request probably will be refused. Webb, Hill's environmental chief, said our position has always been that Houston has been negligent and derelict in getting its sewage plants, especially in the North Side plant, into compliance. Webb said state law does not authorize the board to use its own attorneys without Hill's permission. He said Hill's approval probably is not forthcoming. Police Chief John Wilkinson of Baytown says the investigation of the murders of an electrical contractor and his wife will continue until he's satisfied the couple's daughter and a former coach are the only suspects. Paul and Mary Cantrell were knifed and strangled in their Baytown home last weekend. Paula Cantrell DeReese, a divorcee who lived with her parents, and Vernon McManus, a former Lamar University football coach, are accused of capital murder. And Dallas City Councilwoman Rose Renfro has been admitted to SMU's law school after being originally rejected due to insufficient scores on entrance exams. Mrs. Renfro had appealed her rejection. All News 13 weather for the Metroplex, mostly fair with warm nights and hot afternoons through Sunday. Lows expected in the upper 70s. Afternoon highs should be in the upper 90s. Winds will be southerly at 5 to 15. This is Joe Graham for All News 13.
This is your news and information station, WRR, where you'll hear me, Cleveland Amory, curmudgeon at large. If you don't know what a curmudgeon is, that means you need it.
This is Joanne Jackson with your News and Information Service. The jury in the William and Emily Harris trial will resume deliberation Saturday morning. After the jury began weighing the case on Friday, the judge denied a defense motion for dismissal of charges against the Harrises, but he did not rule on a demand for a mistrial. The defense argued that Superior Court Judge Mark Brandler had failed to tell of a report that a juror may have adversely prejudged the Harrises a week ago. The Harrises, members of the Symbionese Liberation Army, are accused of assault, kidnapping, and robbery. The Senate has voted to reduce taxes for the railroads and airlines as part of the tax reform bill. The Finance Committee estimates the railroads will benefit by about $29 million. For the airlines, that benefit is estimated to mean about $192 million. Congressman Alan Howe of Utah says his new trial, set for late in August, will give him a chance to clarify many matters in his conviction on charges of soliciting prostitutes. A judge in Salt Lake City set August 23rd as the date for the new trial. In the coal dispute, United Mine Workers President Arnold Miller met with 75 local union presidents in Charleston, West Virginia Friday. As he left, rank-and-file members shouted, "No work." The miners' walkout started in West Virginia and spread throughout the Appalachian coal fields and the Midwest. About 14,000 air traffic controllers began their work slowdown yesterday to protest what they said were delays in approval of a new pay schedule. Aside from delays at New York and California airports, it appears the slowdown is having little effect. The focus of the rubber workers' strike moved to Akron, Ohio after negotiations collapsed in Washington. About 100 rubber workers set up picket lines outside 5 Goodyear plants, violating a court order banning picketing. Ronald Reagan's running mate designate says he will support the 1976 Republican platform, even if that means he has to abandon long-held pro-labor positions. This is your News and Information Station.
This is Henry Mancini talking to you from what could be your city's library. That's right, the library. The place where they also keep records and tapes that you can check out and enjoy at home. If you're into music, you'll find songbooks, scores, and books on everything from how to build a harpsichord to the men who write music for the movies. Lots of libraries have concerts these days. Yes, everything from Bach to rock. And as a composer, the library means a lot to me. And it should to you, too, no matter what your special interest. More than just a place for books, your library is the center of a lot of living today. Start getting more out of your library, and you'll be getting more out of life.
A public service message on behalf of the American Library Association.
This is Telly Savalas. To win a fight, any fight, you got to be tough. And that's the way it's got to be in the fight against cancer. Your American Cancer Society says there are 7 warning signals, like a sore that doesn't heal, or an obvious change in a wart or mole. You see one of them, you don't say to yourself, it'll go away. You face it. You see your doctor for a checkup. Cancer is one of the most curable of all major diseases if you catch it in time. So why not? Only a fool gives the enemy a chance. And that's the way we have to fight cancer all down the line. In every one of your American Cancer Society's anti-cancer programs, research, education, patient rehabilitation, and service. And that takes money. Without money, well, we lose. And I'm sure you have a pretty good idea of what we lose. We got to be tough on cancer if we're going to wipe it out in your lifetime. Give generously when your American Cancer Society volunteer calls on you.
All News 13 weather outlook: fair and hot today, tonight, and Saturday. Highs today and Saturday around 100. Lows tonight in the upper 70s. Winds southerly at 8 to 15 miles per hour.
Bruce Jenner won the Olympic decathlon, breaking his own world record with 8,618 total points. The included 1,500-meter event at Friday's Olympics was an exciting one for Jenner and the American team, as narrated here by sports reporter Jack O'Rourke.
Down the backstretch, Bruce Jenner running second right now in the 1,500 meters, the final event of the decathlon, and Jenner is kicking. Jenner is going after the Russian leader. Jenner going after a new world record of the decathlon. Bruce Jenner, who is leading in the first 9 events of the decathlon, would like to win this just to cap it. If he can do a 4:35.8, he will break his own world record, and he appears on his way to doing that. Bruce Jenner, 1,500 meters, the exhausting 10 event decathlon. Bruce Jenner at the finish line. Time 4:11.41. He is over 8,600 points. Bruce Jenner of the USA, his own world record, 85.42. And with that time of 4:11.41, he is over 8,600 points. He has broken his own world record in the decathlon.
Jack O'Rourke on Bruce Jenner winning the 1,500 meters with 8,619 points. Second was Guido Kratschmer of Germany, followed by Nikolay Avilov of Russia. Americans will fight for Olympic gold in 6 of the 11 boxing finals Saturday night. The 3 will face Cubans. Sugar Ray Leonard, a classy, polished light welterweight, meets Cuban Andres Aldama, whose Bulgarian semifinal opponent was carried unconscious from the ring after a first-round knockout. The U.S. and Cubans, with 6 finalists each, both top the modern Olympic record of 5 finalists by a single country. The other divisions where the Americans and Cubans meet are the light heavyweight and the flyweight. Federal Judge Charles Bryant refused Friday to block the scheduled heavyweight title fight in September between Muhammad Ali and Ken Norton. Claiming he has exclusive promotional rights to Norton, Don King Productions sought to stop the fight, which is being promoted by the Madison Square Garden Corporation. Third-year quarterback Don Strock, who nearly bailed the Miami Dolphins out of trouble when their first 2 quarterbacks were hurt last season, will start against the Minnesota Vikings Saturday night. It is 17 before the hour. James Goldstone has directed several motion pictures and many TV shows, including Star Trek, Ironside, and Dr. Kildare. Goldstone's most recent accomplishment is the Universal picture Swashbuckler, which opened at the Radio City Music Hall on Thursday. He was not in the theater. Instead, he was in our studios discussing his views on directing movies.
A director has to be an editor afterwards. A director has to be a writer beforehand. From my point of view, you direct a picture 3 times. You direct it in preparation, which includes script, locations, casting, preparation. You direct it on the sets and stage with cameras and actors. And then what you have left when you finish that is film. And you don't have any of that other stuff that you start out with. Now, the film doesn't necessarily resemble what the image was in your mind when you began. And then you redirect the picture according to what is on that film. Hopefully, when it works, the final image on the film, the final feeling on the film, resembles the initial image in your mind when you were preparing it.
If it doesn't fit the original image, says Goldstone, the director is in trouble, and the audience will sense it. This is your news and information station.
The Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind is much more than a workshop. The Lighthouse offers career and family counseling, work evaluation, referral services, and special recreational events for the blind and visually handicapped persons from 18 to 88. For information, call the Lighthouse at 821-2375. Remember, it's much more than a workshop. The Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind. Call 821-2375 or go by 3940 Capitol Avenue.
WRR Dallas.
345.
This is Joanne Jackson with your News and Information Service. President Ford was in Mississippi on Friday seeking support of that state's Republican delegates to next month's Kansas City convention. Russ Ward reports.
Mr. Ford ended his visit to Jackson with a political pep talk telling the convention delegates the Republican Party could win in November with his affirmative program of peace, prosperity, and a return of trust in government. As for the Democratic nominee, Mr. Ford said he has not been able to detect any uniformity in Carter's philosophy.
Except when he selected Senator Mondale as his running mate and indicated there was a high degree of compatibility ideologically.
Mr. Ford said the Mondale voting record does not coincide with the philosophy of the people of Mississippi. Russ Ward, NBC News, Jackson.
A federal judge has rejected a government request to let the Agriculture Department enforce new food stamp regulations. Ronald Pollack, attorney for the Food Research Action Committee, says the regulations would reduce or eliminate benefits to millions of Americans.
There are 10.8 million people, according to the documents we submitted to court, who would either have their benefits totally eliminated or substantially reduced if the regulations were permitted to be implemented.
Pollack is coordinating a lawsuit against the proposed regulations by 26 states and more than 100 organizations. The 11-day strike of California cannery workers has ended with the ratification of a contract agreement. The 60,000-member union is described as ready to return to work immediately, an offer which will undoubtedly be taken up by cannery owners concerned about mounting losses from rotting fruit and vegetables during the walkout. Union President Fred Sanchez says the contract calls for an average wage increase of 54 cents an hour in each of the first 2 years from a $4.93 an hour base before the strike began. Egypt has criticized the reported agreement between Syria and the Palestine Liberation Organization designed to end the civil war in Lebanon. Egypt calls the agreement a document of capitulation and says the agreement will lead to the liquidation of Palestine guerrillas in Lebanon. Meanwhile, there's been somewhat of a lull in the fighting in Lebanon. Correspondent Bill Lord is in Beirut, and he says two different factions within the Christian forces have been keeping the fighting at a minimum because of their own internal problems.
The reason that the fighting has slacked off over the last few days is that these two major groups are reluctant now to go into combat with each other because they are indeed allies, but they're not really trusting each other enough to go into a very hot battle zone with each other because they're not sure what might happen when the bullets start flying.
Lord says one of the Christian factions is more militant than the other. He says one sees the solution to the Lebanese conflict on a political level, while the other believes politics is the answer. The Palestine Liberation Organization is providing protection for U.S. officials traveling in the Muslim sections of Beirut. The State Department says it acknowledges what seems to be an expanding relationship between the United States and the PLO. Cambodian Premier Pol Pot says that after 15 months of communist rule, his country still has barely enough food. He says serious medical problems have developed and that the country does not have the means to build new factories to spur the economy. Po was elected to head the Cambodian government after elections late last year. He also accused what he calls U.S. imperialists of attempting to overthrow the communist government in Cambodia 6 months after the communist takeover. Scientists at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, have completed tests of soil samples taken by the Viking 1 lander on Mars. Dr. Priestley Toulmin explains what the tests show.
First, we have detected as major constituents the following elements: iron, calcium, silicon, titanium, and aluminum. We are by no means stating that no other elements are present, you understand, but those are the ones which at this very early stage of our data reduction, we have a positive confirmation of.
Dr. Toulmin says the soil has been found to contain an abundance of iron oxide. He says it coats much of the planet's surface and gives Mars its distinctive red color. The Soviet Union has threatened to withdraw from the remaining 2 days of the Olympic Games unless missing 17-year-old Russian diver Sergei Nemtsov is returned to the team. The vice chairman of the Russian Olympic Committee says as far as the Soviets are concerned, Nemtsov has been kidnapped. The Soviets say Canadian hostesses have been working at the Olympic Village in Montreal, encouraging its athletes to defect to Canada. Jacques Moisseau of Canada's Department of External Affairs says the charge is untrue.
The Department of External Affairs cannot accept the unwarranted allegations with respect to the role of the Canadian authorities in this case.
Moisseau says his department is engaged in attempting to contact Nemtsov in order to arrange a meeting between him and the Soviet consular representative and the Soviet coach. Shortly after the jury began deliberating the William and Emily Harris case, defense attorneys moved for a mistrial on grounds the judge has withheld information about a juror's prejudice. The defense says that Superior Court Judge Mark Brandler failed to tell trial participants of a report that a juror may have adversely prejudged the Harrises. Judge Brandler says he has been told of the complaint about the juror, but not in full detail. Defense attorney Leonard Weinglass says if a mistrial is not declared, he will appeal the matter to a higher court and have the deliberations of the jury halted until that mistrial issue is resolved. This is your news and information station.
This is Jim Dooley. The University of California recently announced new hope for treatment of valley fever, a fungus-borne lung disease that annually kills up to 70 people in the state's Great Central Valley. Research bacteriologist Hillel Levine says a new experimental drug, miconazole, offers great promise.
Recently, in conjunction with Dr. David Stevens of Stanford University and Dr. James Sung of the Veterans VA Hospital at Fresno, California, the drug has been used in human beings and with rather dramatic success in most.
The disease affects people throughout the Southwest and Mexico, but it's particularly strong in the San Joaquin Valley, hence the name valley fever. Dr. Levine described the disease, a fungus, which he says is similar to a bread mold.
During the dry months of the year, in the summertime, the fungus produces spores, and these spores become airborne in the wind primarily. When the spores are inhaled, serious disease can occur in about 8% of exposures. And this, of course, represents a very large population who annually have their serious bout with coccidioidomycosis or valley fever.
Levine has conducted animal research with miconazole, particularly on mice.
It's very effective indeed and can save all of the animals under conditions of severe challenge, wherein all the untreated animals die.
Levine's report said that 23 patients who seemed near death were treated with miconazole, and 18 of them showed a recession of the disease. So perhaps a new breakthrough in the fight against valley fever from Dr. Hillel Levine of the University of California. I'm Jim Dooley in Ventura County, California.